Everyone's talking about responsible AI, but let's be honest. How do you actually move from just talking about it to putting it into practice? Well, that is the big challenge for project managers today. And in this explainer, we're going to dive into the new guidance from the Project Management Institute to show you exactly how it's done. So this is the big question, right? The one every single project leader has to answer. It's not enough for our AI to be powerful, it has to be principled. We have this huge responsibility to make sure these systems are fair, transparent, and safe. And that's the core challenge we're going to tackle together. And if you're thinking this is all just some philosophical debate, well, think again. 15%. That's how much this topic weighs on the new PMI certification for AI project management. So yeah, mastering this stuff isn't just good practice anymore, it's pretty much essential for your career. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the main challenge. How do we get from abstract theory to something that actually works in the real world? It's all about taking those high-level ideas of fairness and transparency and baking them right into the daily workflow of a real AI project. It's one thing to say, hey, we want trustworthy AI. It's a whole other thing to have a repeatable process for building it. This is where that classic project management discipline meets the world of data science. We need frameworks, we need tools, and we absolutely need a clear plan. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with a solid foundation of ethics and fairness. Because, let's be real, if your AI is biased, all that amazing power, it turns into a huge liability. So in this section, we'll dive deep into how you can spot and, more importantly, fix bias before it causes any real-world harm. The main villain we're up against here is something called algorithmic bias. And the key word to really lock onto is systematic. See, this isn't about random mistakes. We're talking about flaws that are baked deep into the system's logic, creating results that consistently and unfairly put certain groups at a disadvantage. So how do we fight it? Well, there's a clear 3-step game plan. Step 1 is all about identification. You have to hunt down the source of the bias. Is it hiding in the training data? Maybe in the model's architecture? Step 2 is measurement. You use formal metrics and audits to figure out just how big the problem is. Remember, you can't fix what you can't measure. And finally, step 3 is mitigation. You deploy specific tactics to neutralize the bias you've uncovered. All right, that brings us to our next really critical topic, explainability. You see, a lot of the most powerful AI models are what we call black boxes. They spit out an answer, but they can't show their work. And that lack of transparency, it's a massive roadblock when you're trying to build trust with your users, your execs, and especially with regulators. So this creates a really interesting trade-off that every project manager has to deal with. On one side, you have these super complex black box models that might be incredibly accurate. But on the other side, you have simpler glass box models that are way easier to understand and trust, though you might give up a little bit of that peak performance. Choosing the right balance for your specific project is a huge governance decision. Okay, let's talk about the hard requirements, because beyond just ethics and explainability, you have to play by the rules and protect your systems from attacks. This is all about setting up the guardrails that keep your project, your company, and your users safe. You can think about compliance on 2 levels. First, you've got the external regulations, things like GDPR and the AI Act. These set the legal standards for data privacy and transparency. But then you have your internal project governance, the tools like model cards and risk registers that act as your proof, your evidence that you're actually meeting those standards. And beyond compliance, we have to talk security. AI systems open up a whole new world of potential attacks, from data poisoning that messes up your training data to prompt injection that tricks your model into doing things it shouldn't. Your best defense isn't just a firewall anymore. It's a proactive strategy with built-in safeguards and a super clear incident response plan for when things inevitably go sideways. So, with all these challenges, what are the actual tools you use to manage them? Let's get practical. This final section is all about the real-world deliverables that turn the idea of governance into a reality. Your toolkit really comes down to 3 essential documents. First, the model card. Think of it like a nutrition label for your AI. It clearly lists its ingredients, its performance stats, and its limitations. Second, you have the risk register, which is basically your playbook for anything and everything that could go wrong. And third, you have regular governance audits. These are like formal health checkups to make sure your whole responsible AI process is actually working the way it should. And that brings us right back to our central mission, which is captured perfectly in this quote. This whole thing isn't about a one-off review or a single ethical project. It's about building a system, a culture, and a set of processes that make sure every single AI project you launch is built responsibly, every single time. So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a question. Now that you've seen this framework for fairness, explainability, compliance, and security, what's the very first tangible step you can take on your own project, maybe even tomorrow? Will you draft a model card? Will you take a closer look at your data for bias? Because that's where the real work begins.